Hello again and welcome back to Gravity's Random. Now it's been a minute. I've uploaded last second week of November, I think. That was the last video. But I've been busy this past few weeks, so forgive the quite late upload schedule this time around. But rest assured, I've been busy compiling all the books that I've read the entire year, trying to decide which ones are the best of the creme de la creme of this year. And I plan to release that along with the other books that I've read in 2025, the books and zines. And I wanted to release it first week of January, that entire list, because I feel like to have a top 10 or top 15 or anything of that nature this early into the game would be a bit counterintuitive since the year isn't over yet, and thus the entire we still have a few more days until the end of 2025. So to have a video this early would not make sense for me. So I'd rather have it next year instead. Preferably first or second week of January could work. So without further ado, before I get to the main segments, I'd like to discuss three other things. So first up would be the albums I've listened to, like the standout albums I've listened to from fourth quarter. So that would be October to December. And while I've listened to quite a lot of music, a lot of albums lately, so I'd like to discuss those since I like to listen to music, especially while I'm working from home, because I have the setup where I have a remote job and I only need to come to that job on site for about a week per month, so I have most of the time to work at home. And while I work from home, I like to listen to a lot of music, apart from podcasts, of course. So the standout albums that I have here are the Ambient series of by Brian Eno and various other collaborators, notably Harold Budd and Laraaji. So the Ambient series is a series of 4 albums, which began with number 1, Music for Airports, number 2, The Plateau Mirror with Harold Budd, Ambient 3, The Day of Radiance with Laraaji, and Ambient 4, On Land. So what's notable about the Ambient series for me is, well, apart from the minimalist nature of these albums, like it's the way they cast a very peaceful and tranquil air, and that it's the perfect music for when you feel so off, like because like that album, that album cycle has really helped me focus. Well, apart from focus, that album series really reassured me in a way, in that in the face of cosmic indifference, we still like we do what we can, because like the album is the album cycle is very reminiscent of I don't know, if I were to use an author to compare it to, if I were to use an author's writing style to compare this album cycle, it would be, I think Jon Foster would fit the Ambient series, and that it is while repetitive, the repetition in itself is a kind of calming effect on the listener. So yeah, and the fact that it is timeless. They've been out since the 70s and 80s, but they don't feel dated in any way, which is highly commendable. So yeah, Ambient 1 to 4 is I highly recommend those. And apart from the Ambient series by Brian Eno and others, I've also listened to a lot of Pink Floyd. Apart from the individual songs from other albums, the full albums I've managed to listen to are Dark Side of the Moon and Animals. Now, both of those are concept albums, in that the Dark Side of the Moon takes a more philosophical bent on life, in that it talks about well, that doesn't really talk, but I'd like to imagine a man trying to run away from his problems only to come to terms with them in the end throughout this journey of metaphysical wandering. Whereas Animals is about what I could imagine to be, well, if you've read Orwell, Animal Farm, uh, it's essentially trying to portray animals as a metaphor for uh, systems, specifically those in power, of course. Pigs, I mean, the song titles pigs, sheep, dogs. So you get the point. Um, and it's really notable how Pink Floyd, with their philosophical lyrics and mind blowing guitar work, really managed to tie everything together. So yeah, that's it for Pink Floyd. And another one, another artist would be Nujabes, which I've listened to a lot these days. I've been listening to on repeat. Again, the same hypnotic quality as the Brian Eno, but in a very different way because Nujabes likes to use a lot of samples, specifically from jazz standards and all manner of hip hop. No, rather, Nujabes uses a lot of jazz heavy samples while trying to infuse a kind of hip hop beats, trying to infuse some hip hop beats along the way. So the standout albums from Nujabes have been Lovesick, the Hexalogy, Lovesick Hexalogy, and the Modal Soul is another standout. It's a compilation of his other work, but it's quite pleasing still. My favorite tracks have been Lady Brown is one, uh, Feather is also one from Model Soul. Lovesick, the entire Hexalogy. I'd like to listen to it from end to end, and it really, really has I wouldn't listen to it any other way. So yeah, that's it for Nujabes. Another one would be back to ambient music. Well, apart from Brian Eno's ambient series, I've also listened to a few other ambient records. Actually, a lot of ambient records from multiple other artists. Well, some of them include Aphex Twin. Uh, Aphex Twin. Who else? I think Basinski is one. William Basinski and um Boards of Canada as well. And I really like, I really loved Geogaddi by Boards of Canada. It was I actually came upon it years ago when this YouTuber named like I've seen it in my recommended somewhere because like there's this YouTuber called Tennis Tom who had this video essay about Geogaddi, and he broke down the album into like he had a comprehensive breakdown of that album, and I finally got around to listening to it one day sometime in October, or was it November? Yeah, November rather, first early November, and I really really enjoyed listening to that project. Apart from the obvious, because like I enjoyed Geogaddi because it was very mysterious, but then at the same time, as much as it's mysterious, it's also kind of it's exciting. The fact that it's a very mysterious project is exciting in it to itself, and the fact that there are many Easter eggs hidden throughout Geogaddi is also remarkable. It reminds me of a Pinchon. Like if you were to uh, if you were to compare, I mean, if I were to have an author, again, another author to represent Geogaddi, Thomas Pynchon would fit the bill because Geogaddi has a lot of coincidences, and that, well, Boards of Canada uses a lot of mathematics, real life, like they managed to tie in Satanism, mathematics, whatever the heck, into this grand project that when combined, again has lots of imagery that I couldn't exactly put into words. But I really suggest you go to Tennis Tom's video for more information, or if you want to explore more of Geogaddi. So well, apart from Geogaddi, I also listened to William Basinski's The Disintegration Loops. Again, another one that I found by chance because it is actually another project born of coincidence, or rather, while it wasn't supposed to be connected to anything, it coincidentally had a life of its own when a certain tragedy happened. The tragedy being 9/11. So the story behind it is, from what I've heard, because there's this video essay again. There's a theme going on here, video essays and all. But to to explain it further, the Disintegration Loops is a project by Basinski when he sought to capture the decay of because he has a habit of storing loops of his music, and he hoped to record the loops. He tried to digitize rather the loops of his. They're a few decades old by that point, and by recording the loops, he had come upon an issue in which the tapes have been I think there was a coating on the tapes that was disintegrating. As the longer he recorded the tapes, the more flake, the more material came off of the tapes. So he found that process a bit melancholic to do, but he decided to go on with the recording until such time that there wasn't any material left on the loop. So what he ended up with was a project that sought to that basically captured a very poignant moment in his career, in that by recording those loops, watching them fall apart as he recorded, he captured a unique kind of sound. The longer if you listen to if you're familiar with Everywhere at the End of Time by The Caretaker, you'd understand because the longer you listen to the music, the more distorted it becomes, the more life the more life fades away. That's how I could describe that. And then when 9/11 happened, Basinski happened to see the World Trade Center towers from his apartment burning. And when you look up the album cover for the Disintegration Loops, that's the view that Basinski has seen during 9/11. And while Twin Towers were burning, he basically played the Disintegration Loops over and over again. And to have listened to that story was mind-blowing, and at the same time very poignant reminder of how sometimes coincidences may not be what we expect. And I also listened to of course Radiohead. I've gotten into Radiohead earlier this year, and I listened to a few more of their projects. I re-listened to OK Computer, classic dystopian vision of late-stage capitalism. And then I also listened to Kid A, another banger. And I also listened to In Rainbows, which is slowly become one of my favorite albums. I keep on re-listening to 15 Step like you wouldn't believe. It's been stuck in my head for days. Yeah. So, of course, Kendrick Lamar is on here as well. To Pimp a Butterfly, one of my all-time favorite albums of all time. Timeless message, still a very relevant message despite it being released only 10 years ago, 2015. And Section 80, I finally got around to listening to Section 80. And it took me this long to listen to it because I don't know. Maybe I was worried I might not be able to connect with his earlier work, but then surprisingly held up quite well, and unexpectedly catchy for me as well. And I've also re-listened to Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers again, a classic healing, a very healing album. And what else? What else? Yeah. I've also I'll run down two more artists. So second to the last would be Tyler the Creator. Well, I've listened to most of his stuff. I've actually finished listening to all of his stuff since last year. Um, all of his albums, literally all of his albums. But recently I've revisited IGOR, that endless loop of unrequited love, and it still hits. It still hits. 10 out of 10 album, all the way. Clears most other artists' discographies easily. And lastly, I'd like to discuss Bob Dylan. Um, Specifically, two albums of his that I've only listened to now. Well, context, I've first gotten into Bob Dylan, I think, last year, or no, rather 3 years ago, and unexpectedly connected with Bob Dylan, and ever since I've been listening to single songs out of many of his other albums, but and up to that point, I've only listened to two complete albums of his. The first is his self-titled album, I think the very first one he released, the one in which he had a lot of covers of other country music, and then the second would be the Freewheeling Bob Dylan. That's the other one I listened to. That's my all-time favorite Bob Dylan album, still, I think. But this fourth quarter of the year, I've listened to two more of his albums, namely Bringing It All Back Home and Blood on the Tracks. And again, very Bob Dylan of him. Again, like most, you really need to listen to those songs of his multiple times in order to even get what he's talking about. Same thing with Kendrick Lamar. Multiple listens are warranted, and the more you listen to Bob Dylan, the more it makes sense, because what he's moving at is a vision of humanity that's like he's trying to move towards a more humanistic, albeit satirical vision of what humanity has come to in this day and age. And to think that he won the Nobel in 2016, I would have, at that time, I would not have expected him to win. But now, being having listened to much more of his, having experienced more of his work, I could finally see why he was awarded a Nobel. And I really hope to listen to more of his albums down the line. So that's it for music. And now we move on to the movies I've seen fourth quarter of 2025. Well, one of these movies is not technically in the fourth quarter, but still, I'd like to include it anyway. So I'd only like to talk about three movies that have stood out to me. First movie would be One Battle After Another, of course, by Paul Thomas Anderson, which is a loose adaptation of Vineland by Thomas Pynchon. And I'm putting One Battle After Another as my movie of the year, simply because it is, God, what is there to say that hasn't already been said? It's got heart, it's got everything I could ever possibly want from a movie like that. And it's it while a loose adaptation of Pynchon, I still found much I kept on I kept on I kept track of many references from Vineland that I recognized. Like for example, you had the nuns, like the nuns, like the nuns in the desert training to be guerrillas. That's essentially a reference to the Sisters of the Kunoichi operatives. The sister of the Kunoichi operatives. That's one reference, and then there's another. Well, the characters. So essentially, you have Leonardo DiCaprio's character, which is a stand-in for Zoid Wheeler, of course. Bob Ferguson is Zoid Wheeler. Willa Cather is Prairie Wheeler, and Fernesi Gates is Willow's mother, who is nowhere to be found in the movie after the first act. And of course, Brock Vaughn, aka Stephen J. Lockjaw. God, Sean Penn played such an Sean Penn played that character to a T. He could at least bag Best Supporting Actor next year, I hope. But really, all things considered, all one battle after another really deserves its laurels. And if I'm saying it right now, if it doesn't win Best Picture next year, I am gonna riot. Just kidding. But yeah, I would die on that hill if I have to. But the second movie I'd like to talk about is City of God by Fernando Meirelles. And it's a movie I had to watch for research because I'm writing a chapter partly based in favelas of Brazil. Well, it's a chapter from my current novel in progress. But when I watched City of God, I wasn't. I knew what I was getting into. It was going to be an ultra-violent film. I've heard tell that it was going to be triggering to some people, but when I watched City of God, I could not look away. It was that good from beginning to end. Absolutely incredible cinematography, atmosphere, characters, script. Everything about it is 100% immaculate. For all its disturbing, for us disturbing events and concerning developments, it's really a movie for the ages. I'm already thinking of rewatching it because it's really one of those movies that really gets you, you know. Like you follow you follow a kid who wants to become a reporter, and he documents life in the favelas. Specifically, wait, you follow the life of this kid who tries to be a reporter in the favelas, and then you also get the simultaneous backstory of the gangs that have made up the City of God, or the Ciudad de Deus, which is a real place, by the way. It's one of those favelas in Rio. A favela being like a slum, that's their term for a slum, favela. And I couldn't imagine what life must have been like for people back then in those hostile conditions. Even now, since crime is still crime is very rampant in those areas in Brazil, and it makes me want to because I've written a review that I think Brazil is truly the Philippines of South America, and that movie gave me one more reason why. So yeah. And let's see what else. Yeah, the last movie would be Life is Cheap but Toilet Paper is Expensive by Wang. And no, that film is not about COVID-19, despite the title alluding to any toilet paper being expensive. No, that's not a film about COVID-19. It's actually a detective story. Very absurd, existentialist kind of detective story. Well, pseudo detective story, but it basically follows this guy who's been assigned on a mission to bring a briefcase to Hong Kong from America. It's like a Chinese, I'm guessing American Chinese guy with a suitcase who's been tasked to bring it to the big boss, but then along the way he gets into all sorts of weird hijinks and sex and uh, escapades and all manner of weird stuff happens. And it's structured like a series of monologues basically, and there are many sections told just in a. There are many sections in which the characters just go on and on in Chinese, no subtitles included, which is intentional because you're trying to get the perspective of this. Well, he may be American Chinese, but he doesn't understand some. Well, he understands some of what the characters in front of him are talking about, because like most of the monologues are basically long takes in just still one image, one frame type long takes. You get the sense that he doesn't understand all that they're talking about, and it's only towards the end of the movie that he says, "I need to get a translator for these. I need to get a translator." But it's also kind of funny because he kind of summarizes everything that's happened, like between like the scenes, like he let the character ramble on and on for minutes, and then at the end he'd be like, "So this guy was talking about he A and B and C, and yeah, yeah, I got it." But it's funny as hell, especially the chase sequence. It's kind of dizzying to watch, but not as dizzying as a Gaspar Noé, for example. But I really enjoyed it nonetheless for all its surrealist humor. And that's it for the movies. And another one would be, the last not the least, would be the book that I'm currently reading before this year ends, which is The Three-Cornered Sun by Linda Ty-Casper. So this is the book. It's a new edition, actually, published by Exploding Galaxies, which is a new press in the Philippines. I highly recommend you check out most of their catalog, all of their catalog rather. And so this is a story about, so it's essentially a family saga that spans decades, all up until the Revolution of 1896, which is which is a critical moment in Philippine history. So yeah, I'm slowly working my way through this book, and I hope to finish before the end of the year. So far, it's a slow burn. You get introduced to a lot of characters all at once. The first chapter was a bit. I had to read a bit slowly because I was just taking in the atmosphere, and the characters have been like, I am bombarded with characters from the outset. But the longer I read through it, the more it starts to connect, because you're basically following many members of the Villardo family. So we get the perspective of the three brothers, Simeon, Blas, and Angel Villardo, their wives, their sons, their motivations for whether they are pro or anti separation from Spain, and other doubts, other aspirations they might have down the line, like if ever revolution does break out, what their plans are gonna be. So yeah, it's a very intriguing start so far, and I hope to finish this by New Year's Eve. God willing. So, The Three-Cornered Sun by Linda Ty-Casper. So now that we have reached the end of that segment, which is a kind of long segment, I'm going to talk about the what. Well, this is the start of what I've read. So I'd start with the November ones first, of course, logically. So the first book I read this November was Independent People by Haldor Laxness. And this is a book by this is his most well-known work, Haldor Laxness. I was familiar with this work because Jonathan Franzen convinced me. He convinced me because his advertisement for this was essentially, this is one of the only books to have made me cry. And I thought to myself, if it's good enough to make Jonathan Franzen cry, well, it's obviously going to be a book that intrigues me. So I gave it a shot, and holy hell, did I cry! The ending. Well, the plot of this is essentially you have this indentured, like you had this former indentured slave, Bjarter of Summer Houses, who had bought his freedom, recently bought his freedom, and he decided to acquire some land on a part of Iceland called Winter Houses, and that land is essentially to describe that land, Winter Houses is a cursed land because, like, in the beginning, it's been set up as a place in which Winter Houses is a place in which many misfortunes have befallen its former owners. And the myth was that back in the Middle Ages, Winter Houses was a land occupied by a wizard called Columkilly. And Columkilly is actually based on a real figure. He's actually a priest. A monk or a priest, yeah. And essentially, Columkilly, before he left that land, essentially cursed it to be full of misfortune for anyone else who occupies it in the future. And another key aspect is Gunvor. Gunvor is another legend in this book because apparently she is so foul, and that she has made a contract with apparently she has made a contract with Columkilly, and then her myth has only solidified the infamous nature of Winter Houses, that land. And when she died, she was buried on the edge of a cliff, and that edge of a cliff has a that edge of a cliff, on that edge of a cliff, many people were advised to leave stones for Gunvor, lest they invoke her wrath and bring misfortune upon Winter Houses when they own it. And fast forward to the early 20th century, when the land is finally given to Bjarter. And Bjarter, instead of following the tradition before him, spits on it gleefully by refusing to give Gunvor a stone and by swearing to be the most independent human on earth. And all of that goes more or less all right until he comes across problems, in that he struggles to ask help from his neighbors, despite the fact that they've been freely giving him help. And when he takes a wife, he has a first wife whose name is let me check. So he has, because he had two wives here. The first one is let me see. Rosa. Okay, yeah. His first wife, Rosa, one of the poorest human beings in this book, because Bjarter treats her like dirt. And oh well, Bjarter. That's another thing to consider. Bjarter's outlook, because he only thinks of women as he treats Rosa like a pet. He actually treats he apart from treating Rosa as a pet, he treats other humans around him like dirt. But he prefers the company of sheep than the company of men, basically. And whenever Rosa asks him to come to other people for help, he'd say, "No, we're not going to ask for help. We're independent people." If I have to repeat that again, I swear to God. See, and one day, when Bjarter goes off to a meeting someplace, because every so often he has a meeting with the other croft owners. Yeah, he has a meeting with all other landowners in Iceland, all under the leadership of one Fell King, or the Winter King, or Mountain King rather. Rosa has Rosa had no other choice but to kill a sheep for food, because she was I think she was sick of eating fish. I think she was sick of eating other food that they had on disposal under disposal. I think it was cod or something. But Rosa had to kill a sheep and dispose of it discreetly, because if Bjarter ever found out, she would have been in big trouble, because Bjarter expressly forbid her to kill sheep, because that was his condition, and that sheep were very useful on his farm. And when Bjarter came back, Rosa lied, in that she said, when Bjarter asked where was one of the sheep, one of those prized sheep bred by a reverend. Like, there's a reverend who despises sheep but then bred them for experiments. And Rosa lied in that she said maybe the sheep escaped, and so Bjarter looked for the sheep, and he almost drowned in a lake. Not in a lake. And as he was looking for the sheep, he had a run-in with a moose, and that moose pursued him until such time that he led the moose to a lake, and then he almost drowned in that lake. Not lake. Why do I keep saying like he almost drowned in a river? Yeah, that's what I meant to say, a river. And not to mention, it was a blizzard. It was a blizzard. There was a blizzard happening as he was pursuing the moose, and so he was stupid enough to set out in a. He was reckless and stupid enough to head out in these conditions, and he almost drowned. And then when he finally took shelter at a cave, he decided to give up his search the morning after. And then when he went back to his house, Rosa dies, and by that point, Rosa had undergone labor, and she died while giving birth to her daughter, which who was I have to add, very concerningly, it was one of the most painful descriptions I've ever read in a book. The baby suckling on a wrinkled old dog's teats. So yeah, because the mother had died in bed. Blood was everywhere, and Bjarter showed no ounce of emotion during that scene. Like he just simply um, packed up like the like he just simply cleaned up the mess, had the baby set up, still suckling on the teats of the family dog. And a funeral happened a few days later, and Rosa was basically out of the picture. And then the daughter, whose name is Asta Solilja, finally grew up a few years later. And then we follow the journey of this father and daughter as Bjarter navigates his new life with his daughter, and then he remarries another woman, and also has a like he remarries this other woman, and then there's an element of political intrigue as well, because you get this his clashes with his former tenant. Like no, not tenants, rather. He has a spat with his former owners, because they took a risk when, hold on. Sorry about that, fireworks and everything. But what I was saying is, he had a disagreement with his owners, and that his owners had taken a risk by giving him winter houses, and that he keeps on disappointing. Bjarter keeps on disappointing them by having these aspirations of wanting to be very independent. And then it just goes on and on for like the dynamics, the social dynamics of this time were very interesting. In that this was also the time in which unions, like there's a section on unions, and then Bjarter preferring to side with the merchants, like the merchant class, who continually take advantage of people like him. And he also comes to realize towards the end that the Iceland that he's known was no longer existent, and that everything has turned inside out, and the systems in this book that Bjarter has been accustomed to have no longer worked. And of course, I have to talk about that ending, which is like when I put the book down, I couldn't help but just weep for a few minutes and move on with my life. And while I could go on and on about this book, I'd only like to gloss over some things that I've seen, or rather the themes and meanings, interpretations, and all of that. So we have the imagery of sheep, of course. Sheep are the paragons of docility, subservience. They have no independence. They've always been led. And the fact that Bjarter finds solace in sheep tells it's like he is continuing what his owners have done to him, but to sheep. And what else have I? Yeah, like it is also a it's like sleepwalking. It's like Bjarter, while he has a plan for independence, is very short-sighted in that he only thinks about himself. He doesn't view himself as he doesn't view himself as he doesn't view himself he as a part of society, greater society. And by completely opting out of the new society, he has suffered, and Summer Houses has suffered. And it essentially is a book about agency. Wanting to reclaim agency is the central message of this book. And that Bjarter, while a very independent person and a paragon of agency, a seeming paragon of agency, also has his shortcomings in that he has sacrificed his well-being for. He sacrificed independence for. Anonymous, rather. He has sacrificed a life of connection for independence. His is a life of cold, calculated lines, straight lines, a life that seeks to fulfill himself and only himself, and he does not have anyone else. And that's what I think of Independent People by Halder Laxness, a book I couldn't recommend enough. And after Independent People, I followed it up with Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. I've had this for a long time on my shelf, and I finally got around to reading Hesse. And this talks about, essentially, it's a retelling of the Buddha origin story. It starts off with two friends, namely Gautama, Siddhartha Gautama, and Govinda. And they aspired to live a life, they aspired to live spiritual lives, and Siddhartha and Govinda follow the ascetic route at first, and then down the line they meet the Buddha, and then that's where they part ways, because Siddhartha tells Govinda, go off, search for your own meaning, I will find my meaning in other way I can. And that was the point in which Siddhartha diverges paths with Govinda, and he goes off to a life of he finds himself in a life of worldly pleasures, in which he has this woman in his life, a noble woman who influences him to, he falls for a noble woman, and that noble woman tells him you have to follow in the footsteps of this merchant, and then I'll consider maybe being your lover. So that happens, and over time, Siddhartha has become the very thing he has sworn never to live again. Because in the first part of the book, Siddhartha had his life set up for him. He was the son of a Brahmin, and he had his life all figured out. He was the son of a Brahmin. He had luxury. He had a place to exist as he was. He had a carefree, peaceful, well-off life, and then he threw that all away because he wasn't happy. He struggled to find meaning in that, and then, of course, he went the ascetic route, and then he returned to that life of worldly pleasures after he was influenced by a noble woman. And down the line, at one point, he considered ending it all by drowning himself in the river, but then he listened to the river Ganges, and he found the answer to his problems, which was Om. That's the universal sound, the sound of everything, um, the sound of life, the sound of death, the sound of the universe, Om. Which makes sense because if you listen to the static in your ears right now, what do you hear? Do you not hear Om? And that at that moment he befriends a boatman that he's um, a boatman that he's gotten into contact with years before he met the noble woman, and he strikes up an acquaintance with him until such time that he leaves behind the merchant and everything, his old life, and which the noble woman understands that he'll do eventually. And he leaves that life behind, the life of luxury behind, to live with this boatman, and then he rediscovers what it means to live a spiritual life. And he received, and then like some time passes before he hears about the noble woman's death, and she has left a son with her, presumably the son of Siddhartha, because he and the noble woman have been doing it. Have had intercourse, and many times. It's alluded to here a lot. And the result was a son that he was certain it was his, and he took the son along with him and the boatman, and he tried to control his son, but then his son was not he did not try to control his son, right? He tried to influence his son to be virtuous, but then he would not. He resisted. The son resisted, and he had an outburst. He had a crucial outburst at one time, which he said, "If you he told Siddhartha, I do everything and yet you do nothing. Like I do everything to piss you off, to get you off my back, and still you do nothing. You're still gentle with me. So in response, I will be everything bad. I will grow up to be everything you despise, so that you'll not be, so that you'll be ashamed that you'll ever have a son like me." Something like that, something along those lines. And Siddhartha, Siddhartha still didn't mind, because he essentially he was like, well, let the boy have his meaning. He'll maybe come into his senses when he's a bit older. But it's a bit it's a bit unbelievable, like that he just let him off like that. But I also get his reasoning, maybe. And then the sun drops off the face of the earth after a few, and the boatman also drops off the face of the earth, because he decides to live an ascetic life, the boatman, because like he's found inner peace or something, and he goes off to he goes off to nature. He leaves his simple life he leaves his home to Siddhartha, and yeah, that's about it. And then it builds up to this moment in which this moment where Siddhartha and Govinda finally reunite. And at first, Govinda fails to recognize Siddhartha, but when Siddhartha tells Govinda a memory that only he and Govinda could possibly know, that's when Govinda connected the dots that, oh, so Siddhartha, is that you? Like, it's been years. What? You look so different. See, so and that the more they conversed about the meaning of life, the nature of Om, and other Hindu concepts, and like it builds up to this moment of Om again, the ending, in that we finally see the moment where Siddhartha becomes Buddha. And this is a book that is essentially, in a nutshell, don't give in to attachments. That's one message. And it is, it also attempts to give us another viewpoint of not being, like, being free from samsara. Like, by freeing yourself from the suffering of the world, could you attain inner peace. That's one message. And again, this book invites you to reflect, to be silent, and to do everything, not do everything, like rather tries to set an example of the kind of life we so desperately need, especially now that we're at a stage in which life is meaningless, if not devoid of any external sense, in the fact that we have, like, everything is so saturated, like our world is full of noise. We are being distracted by things that are beyond our control, things that aren't important. And so this book is a reminder. This book teaches us to go back to ourselves, and that's Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. And after that book, I've read True Story and Lucius or the Ass by Lucian of Samosata. So this is a story of two, this is two stories in one. So True Story is about Lucian. It's about a guy named Lucian. Again, Lucian, same Lucian. And it starts off with a disclaimer, a very amusing disclaimer, in which he says, whatever you do not believe a single word I say, because what follows is a rollicking Pynchonian. And again, this is before Pynchon, but essentially this is a book that parodies the travelogue, and this parodies the travelogue of ancient Greece, because Lucian has an issue, or has had beef with Herodotus. He's had beef with many popular travelogue writers back in his day, and his response was that they're too good to be true. The travelogues were too good to be true. They included gods and creatures of mythology that are way too hard to believe, and his response was to come up with an equally more absurd travelogue that attempts to parody and even makes fun of continuity, because this True Story is talks about Lucian's travels. He ends up shipwrecked on an island with wine rivers, and then after that he goes off to space, and then this is actually that part in True Story is one of the earliest examples of science fiction, if you hadn't known. So he goes to space after that, because he's he's been swept up by a hurricane or a tornado, I think. And he's been lifted off millions of feet into the air, into space, and he fights alongside an army of winged hippogriffs. And the army of winged hippogriffs fights off an ant, an army of winged ants by, I guess it was I guess it was Ares or a god of the sun. Yeah, Phaeton. Yeah, Phaeton. Yeah. And victory, and they come out victorious, Lucian's side. And when Lucian gets and then after the battle, Lucian lives on the moon for a few years, and then he decides to go back to Earth. And then when he goes back to Earth, he gets swallowed up by a whale. His party gets swallowed up by a whale, and then they live in that whale for years before they decide to come out through the come out of the whale through the mouth. And like it, and in that whale, before he, when he entered the whale, he found another species of creatures that are, and then they made war with those creatures, and they exited the whale's mouth. And then he finds himself in other misadventures, and then he follows up with, it's too TLDR, just stay tuned for the next book. But then there is no next book. It's all a lie, because but it's intentional, because when he says, I'll tell you more in the next book, there's no next book, because it's another aspect of the parody, the travelogue, because travelogues, they add up, they ramp up the ante, they add even more crap, and which is what Lucian is trying to make fun of. And it's very ahead of its time, true story. And then the S is basically thought of to be the source material. While literary scholars still aren't sure, but they think that it's plausible that to say that the S is a prior material for Apuleius the Golden Ass. And the story here is that Lucian, was it Lucian? An unnamed, yeah, it's an unnamed narrator rather. An unnamed narrator is cursed to be a donkey, and then he again goes into all sorts of misadventures as well. He is taken by thieves. He pretends to be useless so that the thieves will be delayed. And then he also gets into he almost dies as a donkey under the thieves, and then when he is released from the thieves, he goes into he enters into a royal household, and then in that royal household he is mistreated by a child. And when he runs away from the royal household, he comes into possession. He is adopted by a circus, and then in that company of that circus, he is made out to be a gimmick, because they found that, the circus owners, the circus ringleaders found it curious that he was eating human food instead of oats, which he continually complains of eating, by the way, because he says while he is eating oats, he is tired of being treated as a donkey, but that's what he is to other people. He's a donkey. So again, there's an aspect of myth in this story because he was changed. Reminds me of Cersei actually, because if you if you're not familiar, well, Cersei changes people into um, animals, specifically pigs. But then in this story, we have the unnamed narrator visit a friend, and that friend happens to have a wife who, or not a wife rather. Yeah. Right. That friend happens to have a wife who has many magic up her sleeve, many magic tricks up her sleeve. So, yeah, and then it ends with the donkey goes back to human form, and then um, he he visits he comes into contact again with the woman from the circus who is alluding to who illusion is who illusion alludes to um like the donkey having yeah, it's bestiality basically. Yeah, and the woman was like, I only loved you because you were a donkey, and that disappoints the man, but then he moves on, and then he goes on with his life. And yeah, it's very weird. I'd rather you read True Story than you can read this, but then I'd rather recommend True Story more than I find more value in True Story than the Ass. So yeah, uh, that's Lucia's or the Ass and True Story by Lucian Osama Sato. What else? So I have also finished finally the last pension on my to read list, Shadow Ticket, and I was totally shocked because this was not my bingo card for this year. A new pension novel, but here we are, and it's out, and I've read it, and it is very good, very good. The story is basically about this detective. Well, the setting is 1930s Depression era Milwaukee, and you have a private eye called Hicks McTaggart, and he is in charge of looking for a lost heiress of a cheese magnate who is traipsing through Europe, and he is entangled with apparently Nazi, Soviet agent, British counter spy, swing musicians, paranormal practitioners, outlaw motorcyclists, all man, classic pension. Uh, you get all of that, and for fear of spoiling, I'll just keep it short and simple. You have well, this is while a very good novel of pension. It um, leaves like it's a if this ever were to be Pension's last book, and I am certain it will be. It's a very tender book. While critics and other people have often continually made reference to the apparent one-dimensional character of Pynchon's protagonists, um, it's actually like the ante is more up here in that um, well, it sometimes reads as stock characters, but it also manages to pull off something. Um, it reminds me of Inherent Vice in that it reminds me of my reading experience with Inherent Vice in that while I enjoyed Inherent Vice, I could not help but think that this could have been a little longer. I think Shadow Ticket could have benefited from a bit more length, I feel, but I really enjoyed it still. and even more so for the connections to his other work, because this book has connections to Vineland. I've seen connections to Vineland, and of course, the most apparent connections are from Against the Day, which I have up here. So, when like specifically two things about Against the Day are in here, and that one, you have a reappearance with you have a major reappearance from by a character from Against the Day, Lou Bass Knight. One of my absolute favorite characters from Against the Day, reappears as a kind of consultant with whom Hicks McTaggart asks for advice continuously. And the SS Stupendica is also here, and that if you've read Against the Day, the SS Stupendica is where the bilocation event happened, in which Kit and Dahlia Rideout. Kit Traverse and Dahlia Rideout had experienced the bilocation phenomenon, and so the SS Stupendica makes a return here. But instead of the bilocation happening, it's a setup to Hicks McTaggart's assignment, in which he gets entangled with all sorts of shady and equally unbelievable characters. And this book, for the Vineland references then, because there's a book here called not a book rather. There's a character here named Skeet Wheeler, and Skeet, aka Floyd, Floyd Wheeler, aka Skeet Wheeler, is could be a it's like it's not been said out loud by Pynchon, but many believe Floyd to be Zoid's father in Vineland, because again, Floyd and Zinnia, if you combine their names, Floyd and Zinnia, Zoid. So yeah, I've seen that in a Reddit thread somewhere, and so which is cool, and that's a connection in Vineland here. But it's on a structural level, this book is all over the place. But I wouldn't necessarily complain, because it kind of works. Because I found it to be, there are some very beautiful passages. The way it connects in the end is kind of lacking for me, but I still recommend it as a I enjoyed the occult aspects as well, because there are some because there was a segment here in when they were in Transylvania. There were again, the usual genre elements pop up, like the vampires, who Pynchon calls like the Vlad boys. Yeah, the Vlad boys, and then there's a golem in here as well, like a golem, the Jewish golem, and what else? Yeah, like it's in terms of themes, this is a book that also doesn't miss, because Pynchon again goes over paranoia. Of course, that's a staple. I mean, you can't have Pynchon without any paranoia, am I right? So paranoia figures in that McTaggart isn't sure where he's headed, doesn't sure who's watching him. Then you also have elements of Nazism, because the 30s have been, if you look at it from a critical lens, the 30s have been a time of uncertainty, and it was that time of uncertainty that has bred such feelings as it was I guess, a perfect time for unsavory individuals to finally lay home the um, platform of trying to mask fascism as a nationalism, that they, because like the economy, we have to note this is a depression, but not to read into it too deeply, but when depressions happen, all manner of conservatism rises, and when conservatism rises, like it causes this domino effect, in that you have these the 1% trying to exact influence over how to what was that term for it, they're trying to formulate a playbook for how society must be reset. So what is essentially happening here is it's a cultural reset, right? In that the war, like the economy was down, everyone was not sure where they were headed. People are sleepwalking into uncertainty, which was what Hicks McTaggart was doing. His Odyssey was an Odyssey of uncertainty. And that's what I'd use to describe this entire book, an Odyssey of uncertainty. Because Hicks McTaggart, he originally wanted to give up his work as a detective because he never wants to touch another firearm again, or he wants to avoid conflict as much as possible. But then he does one more job, and that job takes him through most of Europe, and when he finds the heiress, he gets into all sorts of counter deals, counterinsurgency type stuff, and it all goes it's bonkers, the development, but it will make sense when you read this book. So as a footnote, considering this very well may be the last book Pynchon will ever publish in his lifetime, I find it a poignant note as well, because this is essentially, might be, though God willing won't be, the capstone to all of Thomas Pynchon. But what he laid out here, while people may have had mixed reviews of it, I still consider it to be a rollicking, fun book in the manner of inherent voice and bleeding edge. But if I were to rank it in Pynchon's overall bibliography, I'd say it's a mid-tier Pynchon, or a lower. It's a minor Pynchon, I think. But who knows? In a few years, maybe people will reevaluate this, and we'll see how it stands up. So yeah, this is a Shadow Ticket by Thomas Pynchon, another book I'd recommend to anyone who's a super fan of Pynchon. And next we have the second to the last book in November, which is The Day Room by Don DeLillo. And this is again a DeLillo I haven't heard about until I just saw it on Facebook. I've been scrolling through a bookstore online, Facebook, like a Facebook page of a bookstore, and then they had this for sale, and I thought, oh, why the heck not? And it appears to be an early edition again. It's a hardcover, and it's encased in a mylar sleeve, which is good. And this book is essentially a play, and it's a play in two acts. The first act being, like, the premise of this play is it's a comedy about a hospital with doctors, patients, and nurses. And while the play goes on, you're not sure if the doctors are playing patients or if the nurses are doctors or if the patients aren't patients. Like, it's a mind. It messes with your mind in that way. And this book toes the line between what we think is real and what is actually a performance. I mean, if you've read any of Pirandello, you'll see what I mean, because Pirandello toes the line between illusion and reality, and this is what DeLillo attempted here, towing the line between illusion and reality. Because in a way, you have these patients who we're not sure are actors, and we have doctors who are not sure are patients, and nurses who purport to be nurses but aren't, and we are slowly led in through Act 2. Act 1 was essentially the setup, the switching of identities, and then Act 2 is essentially the play. It's like the before the play. So if we were to organize the acts in chronological order, it would have been Act 2, then Act 1. Because Act 2 is essentially the lead up to the performance. Because Act 2 starts off with these two characters talking about how there's this avant-garde playwright who stages plays in the most unorthodox ways. And the play they are apparently seeing now takes place in a hotel. No, not a hotel. Because the setting is a motel, right? And they drive out to see. They've driven out thousands of miles away from their home to see this avant-garde show by a certain Arno Klein. And this Arno Klein is revealed to be a patient. He stands in for a patient in a Act 1. It made me want to read the entire thing again. I finished this in one sitting. It's very easy to read, but the more you turn the pages, the more you start to see the connections. And while not a mainstream DeLillo, I'd still recommend it. The dialogue is funny, it's very propulsive, very thought-provoking. I'd recommend this especially to the Don DeLillo completists. But if you're looking for something short to knock out in a few hours, this is the book for you. The Day Room by Don DeLillo. And last but not least for November is Dune by Frank Herbert. This is the first volume of the Dune series. I've read this after being intrigued enough by the two movies by Denis Villeneuve, and I decided to take a crack at it after all that time. And I'm pleased to say that I've been quite surprised, actually, by this book, because I don't really pick up sci-fi. I've actually But I've been consciously trying to cross into other genres, and I decided sci-fi was gonna be it. And I finally picked Dune up after so long, after it being on the shelf for so long, and I'm pleased to say that I really like this one. So again, this book needs no introduction, but just to recap the plot real quick. It's about Paul Atreides and his plot to avenge uh, his father's murder and his those like his sabotage by other powers um, in the struggle for power in his universe, specifically his hold over Arrakis and his plot, like his plot rather, his eventual rise as a messianic figure known as Muad'Dib, or the Mouse. And the world building was solid. The writing was alright. Not quite used to third person omniscient, but it was a interesting exercise. And some parts had some parts were just very beautiful, especially the descriptions of the dunes and the environment, like the overall environment in of Arrakis. The way Herbert wrote those scenes live in my head rent free, and I am quite intrigued by all the characters as well. The way Herbert wrote it was like I've heard it described as it's like you're figuring the story out as you go along with the characters because they're faced with an equal amount of uncertainty as the reader. And because of that, you don't really get a black and white picture of morality, as opposed to Lord of the Rings, where good and evil are cleanly demarcated. Whereas in here, the moral compasses of all characters are very gray, which is quite enjoyable because this is essentially how humans are, morally gray, and it is very realistic as well. Like the treatment, the psychology of the characters is very spot on, and not a word is wasted. Um, well, this may be a very long book, but not a word has been wasted, and I am satisfied. Yeah, I'm very satisfied with this book. But I've decided not to read the rest of the series so as not to ruin my experience with the first volume because I've heard very mixed things about. While the other books in the series are good, while the other books in the series are good, I have also heard that the payoff in some of the later volumes of the saga aren't don't compare to this, and even more so, the spin-offs by Brian Herbert haven't lived up to the reputation of what his father Frank Herbert had set out to do. So I have decided not to read the rest of the Dune series. So again, Dune by Frank Herbert. Herbert, I really enjoyed this, but I won't proceed with the other books. All right, now we come to what I read in December. So December has been a very busy month, so I could only get a few reads here. I've only read two books, but then I've made up for it in zines. Hopefully, I've read two books and five whole zines. So the first thing I read was "How German Is It" by Walter Abish, and this is the edition published by Faber and Faber. And this is essentially should I say because it purports to be a roman play, but I'm not sure if it is. But it tells the story of one. What was his name? Yeah, Ulrich Hargenau. It tells the story of one Ulrich Hargenau and um, his brother Helmut. Yeah, right. So Ulrich um, navigates this web of, like, it purports to be a detective story because Ulrich navigates through the reasons why his former wife had left him, um, the business with his brother Helmut, the architect, the famous architect, and how he had been navigating through this whirlwind of sex, politics, and like a overall uneasy relationship with life in general, especially in a post-war Germany. And this book is notable because it asks the question how German. Well, there is a from what I've written in my personal review of this. How German is it is essentially a satire of clashing German sensibilities, and that it purports to like a constant motif in this book is questions such as what is blank, or maybe statements like there's a refrain here, um, answer immediately. That's a constant, like, the question and answer is a constant refrain here. So as if Abish was interrogating how German is this aspect of German, how German is this aspect of post-war Germany and pre-war, or during Germany's Nazi regime, right? Right. Um, so there is a kind of double bind, you could say, double bind of German consciousness, in that Abish, in his interrogation of how German everything is close to nitpicking how pride, shame, and other ideals reflect the state of contemporary Germany through the dealings of Ulrich Hargenau, his brother, and his ex-wife, his like other characters in this book, and basically, um, it is it, as much as it's page turning in that respect, and wildly entertaining as well and funny, it is also highly philosophical in that respect as well, because it also talks about, while he isn't mentioned by name, he's known by another name, Broomhold. He like the concept of Das Sein is mentioned here as well, and so there are hints of Heidegger. Although Heidegger in this book is called Bromhold for some reason, and then there's a city named after him called Bromholdstein, and that's where most of the action takes place, in that fictional place named after Bromhold. And it is there where Ulrich tries to grapple with his situation, like what happened since his political days have been over, because like he back in the day, Ulrich had been involved with a group purporting to like a group skewed towards terroristic acts, but then and then there was a whole trial that happened, and after that trial never saw his ex-wife again, and he's always wondered how, like he's always had his ex-wife in the back of his mind, and then he had another woman in his life, was again, but then this she was a American living in Germany, and then he also wonders, like, is there a connection, because that woman, see, like the further he explores connections, he finds that that woman happens to be a part of this that happens to maybe know his ex-wife, or maybe fallen into the same circles as his ex-wife. And again, there are a lot of connections here as well, and that multiple bombings as well, and that the target of the bombs always has to do with the Hargenau, and there's another sense of like denialism as well, and not and denialism and outright historical whitewashing because Ulrich Hargenau, he had a father. His father also named Ulrich, but then um, his name was Ulrich von Hargenau, and by him removing the von later, like by the son Ulrich, Ulrich the son dropping the von later on after Germany fell after World War II. It was like his way of saying how he did not wish to be his father, how he was putting out all thoughts of his father by not honoring the Hargenau name, by dropping the von. It was basically because like his father had done things in the war. Like all his life, he's been told that his father Ulrich von Hargenau was a hero, but then the further he looked into it, he was shot by like from a because like von Hargenau was one of the collaborators who almost assassinated Hitler apparently in this book, along with von Stauffenberg. So his family considered him a hero, and other people found him to be a cause of shame. So by dropping the von, he was not sure. He was denying that part of his personal history. So that's one other motif I've noticed as well. And lots of other things I'd rather leave unexplored, but I highly recommend this one. I'd want to read more Abish. I've been looking to read Alphabetical Africa next if I could find a copy of it. But yeah, this has been How German Is It by Walter Abish. And after that, I've read two zines in quick succession. The first zine being Quantum Elevator by Marianne Pasinao and Dionysia by a bunch of students from West, Abido, Verbania, Chavez, and Tijuana. So these two zines I've been given these at the a local fair we had, like the Iloilo Mega Book Fair that happens biannually. So we have this fair that happens every April and November every year. And in that fair, we have regional literature available in the form of zines, and we also have independent publications and other locally produced books in our region. Since context, I live in Iloilo, which is a region 6 in the Philippines, Western Visayas, and IMBF Iloilo Mega Book Fair is our way of preserving or continuing. Maintaining a space for regional arts and literature to flourish. So these zines are a product of that movement. So I'd like to talk briefly about them. So that I won't be showing them in the runoff hall next year. So yeah. First, I have Quantum Elevator, which is a simple comic. It's quite humorous. It's just a comic about this just a one shot about a girl, like two girls go in an elevator. One of the girls is like, I bet if I imagine we'd like teleport somewhere else, because like they're in an elevator and stuff. Yeah, and then they end up in a hallway, and then she thinks, and then both of them get back inside the elevator, and then the other girl's like, oh my god, we might have ended up in the back rooms. So we go back inside the elevator. And yeah, that's the whole setup. It's like a one shot joke. And it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a breezy, light, a good pick me up. Quantum Elevator. And Dionysia is a collection of prose and poetry with the Greek myth as a motif, and specifically delves into sapphic themes. And as a collection, it's a good sampling. I've just enough there's some things in here that I can't show you. They're illustrations, but it's good. It's good. Promising, and I see potential in the students who did this. Yeah, so Dionisio. And after that, I read what is perhaps I've read what Andre from the Untranslated called possibly the greatest surrealist novel ever written, Solenoid, by Mircea Cartarescu. And this is a book that I can't get enough of. I've read it in a furious. I've read it over a furious, slow but steady yet furious pace. 11, 12 days of straight on and off reading. But this book is essentially, again, to give the plot summary, it's about a guy, a school teacher, who is loosely based on a parallel version of Mircea Cartarescu, who thought he was going to have a literary career, but then continued being a teacher for most of his life, and he had suffered many personal tragedies, many personal failings, and as he goes about his life, he recounts the many anomalies that he's had, and he revisits them, writes them in a journal, and he tries to connect all those anomalies to his everyday life, and in the process uncovers a series of solenoids scattered throughout Bucharest, of which one of which resides under his home, a boat-shaped home that he's bought close to his parents in Stefan del Mer. Well, his house, the boat-shaped house, being it's like a street away. Like the avenue is Stefan del Mer. Like if imagine Bucharest were a pebble or a fist, right? Bucharest were a fist. Then Stefan del Mer. Let me put this down for a bit. So if Bucharest were a fist, Stefan del Mer would have been the boulevard here, and Micah Domnului, the street where his boathouse would have been, was somewhere around here. This line right here, somewhere here. So that's the mental image. So that Mircea Cartarescu, as he lived in that house, recounted his anomalies. And the house itself, the house he has with the solenoid underneath, is also an anomaly in itself, but he doesn't really realize it. It's like he thinks the house having many rooms inside, many Euclidean aspects towards it, kind of in a vague House of Leaves, Danielewski style. He thinks that's normal. And he doesn't ever get lost in it, despite its labyrinthine tendencies. So yeah. Which is fascinating and existentially humorous. So that said, he recounts these anomalies and then eventually stumbles upon how all these solenoids connect to form a network of solenoids scattered all throughout Romania, and it results in this further exploration, like further metaphysical adventures into the world of dust mites and the connection between the Voynich manuscript, the Rubik's Cube, the Tesseract, what have you, and further adventures into his life as a kind of guinea pig, should I say, in a preventorium, tuberculosis preventorium. So yeah, this book is a whole lot. I can't possibly summarize everything in this one tiny snippet of a review, but Uh, what I've noticed run throughout this whole book, is the fact that it is essentially a book that charts the decay of Soviet era Romania, like towards the collapse of Romania, like Soviet time, because this book is set in the 70s and 80s, so it essentially charts um, the late Soviet era of Romania up until the collapse, the fated metaphorical collapse when Nicolae Ceausescu was ousted from power sometime in the late 80s. And while Ceausescu was not mentioned by name, all throughout Solenoid, you could say that he haunts. Um, I think he haunts the story in here beyond the pages. That could be a thing to consider, since this book is essentially uh, a nightmarish. You could call it a nightmarish diary of that time, that era of Romanian history. And the way Mircea Cartarescu structures this book is interesting, in that he has many motifs. Like the very consistent motif here is the body, imagery of corpses, organs, like he talks about it's like he likens his body to Romania or to Bucharest. His body as a reflection of the state of decay of Bucharest, because the body is often depicted as a rotting, um, mangled corpse, or like he likens the state of his internals, or the state of his skin, his eyes, his bones, his organs, everything about him, likened to the state of the griminess of Bucharest, or like the general pervasive atmosphere of how Bucharest is this. Like he imagines Bucharest as this body that's on the verge of collapsing, and that Bucharest is very ill. And you could tell because the way he describes everything here, the people, the atmosphere, the buildings, everything around this, like everything around him, it's repulsive. Yet you can't look away, because he plays with language in such a creative way, unlike anything I've read before. And I don't know, like it reminds me of, I mean, if I could even, because like I've noticed right now, there's a repetitive nature to this as well, like the solenoid. It kind of reminds me of the Romanian Wind Up Bird Chronicle, if I could even say that. But whereas Wind Up Bird Chronicle is dealing with the again the like the hidden history of what happened in Manchuria. This book is again an indictment of Soviet era society, Soviet era Romanian society. And again, another aspect here I'd like to point out is the medical industry, or like medicine in general, because time and again, this parallel Mircea Cartarescu, uh, he is always failed by healthcare, and that every time he gets sick, it's like he's developed so much distrust with the medical system, in that he despises doctors. Um, he despises healthcare. Despises everything about um, like he's developed this bleak outlook on the healthcare industry at that time, and he's grown to distrust systems like that. And yeah, this is very indicative here. Another motif I'd like to point out is insects, specifically dust mites, spiders, what have you, anything with legs, many legs. Because it's like he uses the world of dust mites and these smaller insects as a way to zoom in to the illness that is Bucharest, or the illness that is um, like the metaphysical illness. It's like using these creatures as a way to interrogate metaphysical illness and trying to look beyond surface level. And there's a section in here where he literally becomes, like, for a moment, a dust mite. He inhabits the body of a dust mite in order to ask about the gospel, or in order to spread the gospel. And he finds that the gospel is dead as he explores that world, that parascopic world, like microscopic world as a dust mite. And another thing is, which I have to add, has been pointed out by which has been pointed out by Rambling Raconteur, is his portrayal of women. Yeah, which I agree is kind of problematic in hindsight, because it's as if Mircea Cartarescu is this the narrator, which is the parallel version of him, I suppose, is has continually viewed everything through, of course, a very objectifying view, which again, Murakami reminds me of Murakami, but it's it's got a purpose to it, I think, because he finds, it's like he finds the world he's living in repulsive. In effect, that said, he also finds other aspects of it repulsive, but then at other times he makes such erotic imagery out of like he boils down some of the women he's met into erotic imagery, which is also, again, a bit problematic. But it's there's a lot of points to consider in this book, and I hope to make a longer review of this next year. I really enjoyed this, and I hope to read more of Cartarescu. I have three other works of his to look forward to. One which is Blinding, and then which was it? Blinding. Theodoros is one, and yeah, those are the ones I can think of. And he has many other work that is unpublished. Not unpublished, rather. He has many other work in English, in Romanian rather, that has yet to be translated, and I really hope to see how Sean Cotter would be able to pull off more translations, or if anyone other than if McLawton could perhaps grace us with a if he knows Romanian. But yeah, I could go on and on about this book, but this is Solenoid by Mircea Cartarescu. And finally, I have three more zines I'll read in quick succession after Solenoid. Also from the same IMBF that I've attended. So the first of those is Machine and Brains by Angelina Nakaya. Excuse me. A friend of mine, she signed it for me. So it's just a primer on AI and how AI could be a force for good, and that she argues that it's like people's assumptions that AI will not work might be detrimental, more detrimental than our fear of what AI is capable of. So great points raised here. It's a good sampling of ideas, and hopefully this could be a full-blown essay. It has potential to be a longer essay. So yeah, Machine and Brains. And two zines that are poetry by the same author, Sir Leonard Alcoran. So first is Tigbaylo. So this is a zine in Kinaraya with translations from Filipino, and it's basically a queer. It's like a collection of poems revolving around metamorphosis and the interchange of like metamorphosis and interchange through the lens of the queer experience. So um, you have themes of the body again. It's like a yearning. I would describe this and the other collection as a yearning. Yearning would be the best description in that while the queer experience is often, because the queer experience in the Philippines is often while while many queer authors have been getting lots of major representation, not enough, not nearly as much has been there have not been as much before that, and this collection is a good example of what it means to be to inhabit such a space. So yeah, Tigbaylo. And then the last one is Intersections again by Sir Leonard, and it is another collection of poetry, this time in English. And again, it talks about the same. It picks up from the same. It picks up, but in a different direction this time. Like it, whereas Tigbaylo is confined to the individual, Intersections is confined to expands into the um, intersections of the many, in which he talks about concepts that try to reframe um, the intersections of life that we barely notice, but again through the queer experience, or you could, or it's actually very democratic because there are no set pronouns, so you could really imagine anyone lying in these intersections. So these poems essentially navigate through an endless cycle of forgetting and moving on. At least that's how I interpreted it, and it's very simply written but impactful nonetheless. My favorite here has to be um, a paean to weightlessness, which is a poem about lying still, or a poem about inaction, but still inaction through stillness, like social stillness in a way. And I also enjoyed this other poem. Oh, yeah, this is a paean to weightlessness, by the way. Let me show you the page. Here we go. This poem right here. You may pause it to read it, but yeah, this is the poem that I like. And I also like the shapeshifter. You can see the format is interesting. See, so yeah, a good sampling of poems again by Sir Leonard. Intersections. And now that we've ended with the last zine, I'd like to talk about my 2026 reading plans and other projects. All right. So, I first up wanted to finally start the William T. Volman project, which is me essentially slowly reading through all of the works that I've amassed from his, which is back there. All of his works from You Bright and Risen Angels up until A Table for Fortune, which is a tall order, not gonna lie. But I hopefully will be able to get through a better part of his bibliography within the year, slowly but surely. And I hope to review all of them. I hope to do justice when I review all of them, all of Volman's works that I haven't yet read. Because right now I've only read Europe Central and The Ice Shirt. And I've purposefully held off from reading many other Volman after that because I really wanted to start from the beginning of his career up until the most anticipated box set. So yeah, the William T. Volman project. Second would be the Trilogiyang Reactionario, or the Reactionary Trilogy by Sir Arlo Mendoza, which I hope to review. All three books in a video someday. So that would be Aklat ng Mga Naiwan, or Books of the Damned, Movovog, and Meirelles sa Complicidad, or Materials and Complicity. And I hope to review them not broken up, preferably into multiple parts, just one video, so that I could get everything out, my full thoughts, and because it's finally time, since I've been really holding off on those until I get to at a point in my life in which I could savor them more easily. And again, I mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. I'm also gonna read the Apocalypse Quartet by Laszlo Krasnohorkai, because I have finally completed all four. Completed them, as in bought everything, but I'm still waiting for Baron Venkheim to arrive. It's been stuck in the post for about a month now, or a few weeks, almost a month, and I hope to get it this January sometime. And again, like the Reactionary Trilogy, I hope to review all of them in one video, much like Brock over at the active reader, or the active mind rather. And yeah, and another one would be author spotlights. So next year, expect a lot of author spotlights, in that I will take a look at some authors and their whole back catalogs, basically their entire bibliography, if possible. So some authors I'd like to include would be Haruki Murakami, Kazuo Ishiguro, Ed Park, Mark Z. Danielewski, Osamu Dazai, Radwan Asar, and Thomas Pynchon, among others. In the case of works that have, like in the case of translated works, like for example, we have the Dazai, or if maybe Hankang or something. In the event of those videos, I maybe consider just a partial look at their bibliography, because I understand not everything of theirs has been translated into English yet. So whatever I come across, I'll just try to include as many books as I can in the author spotlight that I've read. So yeah, which is why I'm slowly amassing many authors, especially those that I've enjoyed, because I hope to talk about all of them in this kind of format, the author spotlight. So yeah. And another one would be craft videos, or videos about writing or publishing, or videos about my writing philosophy, my writing process, and others, because I really want, because like neglected one part of my channel tagline, which is books, writing, and everything in between. So the writing part, I think, is now's the perfect time to finally expand on that. Especially the things I've been doing behind the typewriter, because I do on-the-spot poetry and stuff like that, and I hope to share those with you soon, as well as my published work and everything else related to writing and literature in that part. And finally, I also hope to do more single book reviews, especially of often overlooked books and other postmodern greats that haven't been talked about as much. The chief of which I'll be prioritizing a review of Hunger's Brides right here by W. Paul Anderson, because I've not had the time to do a review of that this year because of some schedule conflict. So I hope to I hope to deliver on that next year, because I've only done one single review, one single book review of like one single comprehensive deep dive, which is Shot and Fro by Mikhail Lentz, by translated by Max Lawton. So, and that video has been doing the rounds. Thank you to everyone who's watched that and for supporting that. So I hope to do more of those down the line, and again, try to spotlight more overlooked titles. So yeah, that's the end of this video. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, share with on social media, wherever else, recommend it to a friend, or if you have any questions or any thoughts on what I've read, feel free to share down in the comments below, or reach out to me via email if you want. So thank you all, and happy holidays. Bye.